I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, man. Go ahead. Finish.
When you compare the dark energy to the background medium, whatever that is, it's off by like 10 to the 120th power. So something's not adding up. But Paper Organizer, or whatever his name was, 2015, he said the math's working out beautifully. He's a physics teacher. I'm just a pizza guy, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, in
You guys expect
Newtonian, gravity's a force, and relativity it's a pseudo. Like, dude, it's just so. It's a law of contradiction, right? It breaks that.
It would be a contradiction to state that both are true, of course, but no one does that.
I think that it was confused. I
yeah.
think that the
People do that in
practicality
here.
part of it. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hear,
We talk at the same time.
Go ahead,
That's
Dave.
cool. Yeah, I think that the practicality part of the fallacy was misinterpreted as what was meant with the original part of it. Because it's not like, or you're saying a yardstick's practical. We shouldn't use a yardstick because it's practical. We should. And he was saying, go get an electron microscope, and that was like a ridiculous, um, you know, way of measuring something with an electron microscope because it would be more accurate. We should just do that instead of being practical with a yardstick. That's what he was saying about, like, it wouldn't make sense to use an electron microscope. He wasn't really saying to do that, right? Then the other part of it is the practicality of the fallacy of practicality is more akin to like what he was saying about Newtonian physics, or like mass attracting mass. The practicality of the idea might be useful, or even the model itself, like the ball Earth model, is just it's a practical way of using a lot of these things in a way that makes sense all of one model, even if it's not a ball. It's a practical way of formulating things so that they can have everything in some type of function, even if it's not real. It's practical to use it that way because that's how the electromagnetic and magnetic forces work in a similar way, or whatever it is, whatever the reasons are. And that's pretty much what we got. We got the model that's practical for a lot of different reasons, but then people take it as like reality, which is the mistake because we're not on a ball, in my opinion.
Well, it's the reification that's a mistake, right? When you're a 5-year-old kid and the teacher says, "Look, Timmy, you live here," and they point at a ball on the desk, kid is like, "What is she talking about?" Okay, we live on a ball. And the old way of educating people, the 7 liberal arts. I'm not talking about the modern stuff. I'm talking grammar, logic, rhetoric, right? That's what every kid needs to learn. And then the very last thing they teach, what's the last thing on the quadrivium? Isn't it cosmology? Instead, we teach kids, look here, terrible lizards. Everything we say about terrible lizards is absolutely true. Look here, you live on a ball. Don't question it. We're counting on that anchor bias and the sunk cost bias, confirmation bias.
It's not like they have to say, look, it exists. No, they've taught us it, so we automatically know that they exist. I mean, why else would they be teaching us this? And that's kind of how we take it, which is wrong. Looking back on it,
And it goes
They
much
treat us
further
like
than that.
if they're lying about it, it makes sense that the whole analogy of they treat us like children. Like say you're taking care of like a whole school of kids, and you have to get them to stay in order and treat each other nice and do all the things that make it like pleasant for everybody generally, speaking. When really, I mean, if you didn't do any of that kind of like pretending that there's some kind of game they have to play that makes a certain order to the day and all the different things that you're supposed to do. And I'm not excusing it. I think that's how they justify it, right? Because otherwise it'd be like chaos and kids would be running around and like pulling each other's hair or running off into the neighborhood around the school or whatever it is. And that's how they see it. They see it as like, and then they make it ridiculous on purpose. Like I was just DMing somebody about the NASA bathroom tour, and how they're just gaslighting. There's no way that they're all hovering over that toilet without any toilet seat. I mean, it's just particulates of shit going all over the place with near, zero gravity. It's just like they make it ridiculous on purpose, in my opinion, so
Hey,
that
Dave.
they can just kind of be like, if you believe it, that's your fault. It's just like a game we're playing, and it's not. We don't take it too seriously because we're obviously not. We're playing with water up here on the ISS and washing the long hair that's sticking up, and really, she would have her head shaved. She wouldn't have hair all over the place. That would be obviously the way they would do it, right?
Well, just real quick too, Dave. When you're talking, I was picturing, yeah, and try to stand up in class and tell the teacher that they're full of shit. See what happens to you then. You go to the principal's office, right? You get disciplined if you
Well,
don't
yeah, of
go. If
course,
you,
and you should, right? Because that's the structure, right? Otherwise, if you could just stand up and call the teacher a bitch every day, then it wouldn't make any sense to have the structure they have, right?
yeah,
Because it would
no,
just be
it's
chaos,
very
and nobody would learn. Everybody would just call the teacher a bitch and leave. So
it's a
it
great
makes sense if
analogy.
you're going to have a system, you know.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah, like the other one is like you have to have that like place that you lie about because all your drugs are in that room. You don't want the kids going to that room. Can't tell them there's drugs in there or whatever it is. You don't want them to see. So you make up a story about the monster in the room, and you justify it because otherwise you have to tell them the truth, which they can't handle. And they think we can't handle the truth. And maybe it's true. Maybe there's a truth we can't handle. Maybe there is a justified part of the lie. Who knows? Maybe there's outer ponders that are, they're definitely going to fuck them up if they tell us the truth or whatever.
That's a superiority complex, right? People can't handle it. What's the government made out of? People? Oh, so people can't handle the truth. But the government can handle it. No, it's about power. It's obviously
Government,
we're superior. We got the knowledge. You don't need the knowledge. Keep using your internal combustion engines and don't use all these modifications because EPA says that we'll put you in prison if you modify it to make it more efficient.
dude, and people get mad when you tell them what government what it means. Like I've heard people get mad. No, it doesn't. Like, are you seriously? Like, it's right there. Just go look it up. What does government mean? Govern mind. Meant.
And then people act like,
Yeah.
oh, they were doing monarch mind control and monarch, operation, these things, but they stopped doing it. Sure, they did. Sure, they don't do Operation Paperclip anymore, even though you can watch like a video from 10 years ago where they're all saying the exact fucking thing in unison, like fucking robots.
But they put that in plain sight too, right? Like the meaning of government being mind control and, declassifying things or even letting you know what Project Paperclip was all about. It's like here, if you're smart enough to realize the truth about these things, then there you go.
No,
There's the
they don't
truth.
hide it at
But
all,
there's
dude. They don't
there are
hide
these
it.
other people. There's these other people that need the lie or need to. They're not worried about all that. They just need to like be told, how to brush their teeth and go to bed to start with, and then how to do like the meaningless job. It sucks that the Rockefeller education system doesn't even make people, aware that there's other things to find out. That's the unfair part. But
Dave, I wanted to ask this earlier. Don't you think it would have been a thing that you would do like in grade school as on a field trip? You'd go and you'd measure the curvature of the earth or something. You know what I mean? Like
oh
that
yeah,
would
yeah,
be.
yeah. Was that what you were asking about? If I recorded in the DM, is that the part you were asking about?
Maybe I don't know, but I remember when I was thinking that I wanted your take on that. Like, don't you think that that would be something that we would totally have done?
Yeah, the reason I was going to answer the conversation last night before it ended up being a whole thing about planes was for that reason. Because a long time ago, there Gio and I were talking about that, or maybe I was just listening to like Gio and I added in later about it. But yeah, like all of the things that would happen if it was actually real, like if they actually had a rover on Mars, if there was really a rover on Mars, we would be glued to our TV and just like amazed, like totally ball. Like we would just be like, "Oh my God, they did it! They actually did it! Oh, look at the thing now! This is incredible!" Like we would all just be like, blown over, but people just don't even pay attention to it, because almost like they know, but they don't, it's almost like it's done in that same kind of tongue in cheek way. Here's the graphic image of this thing going up, and yeah, it just happens to look like Devon Island, and those things I think are shown to us on purpose, so the thinking man has an out, and then they can like ease their conscience because they're not really lying, and they're making it kind of stupid on purpose, so that if you believe it, then that's on you.
That's the one that really gets me. I get part of it. Think where I am. Because I don't know anything. You could be a brain. Could be a brain in a jar. What you could
You're
be.
cutting out, by the way. Your mic's really bad, and you're cutting out.
It's that GPS signal that he was getting that was so good. No, but I'll ask the Globers in here, like, do you really think that flat earthers are dumb, like, or stupid, like, for real?
I will not say that all flat earthers, but some are, and generally they are the most vocal, so they are the ones that people see.
The dumb ones are? They're the ones that show out the most?
Yeah. Every people remember the one who will be yelling, swearing, and everything. Nobody remembers the one who is quietly and logically putting his argument forward.
Well, dumb and intelligent, smart, all those things are kind of like they have their own like
Yeah, it's
nuances
just,
to it. Like the whole joke I always say about the rock, they joke saying I'm no rocket scientist, but that's the joke on everybody because it's like the rocket scientist is smart enough to build the rocket. He's just not wise enough to realize it never goes to space. So there's different types of intelligences.
There are many different type of intelligence. But you can see which city is very good at speaking and uh, vocalize his ID. Doesn't mean that what he said is true, just that he presented good. It's a kind of intelligence.
well, you have the discernment, right, to tell whether or not somebody's full of shit.
Again, all of that is
Yeah,
relative to my
yeah.
knowledge
He
compared
could
to what he
believe it, and
said.
still it could still not be true, even if he believes what he's saying. Yeah, it's all about belief. It's all, they love to they prey on our beliefs, and if you can make something like mathematically believable, ooh, that's a good one. If you can like reverse engineer a whole like system and make it seem like it's mathematically proven, man, they got us with that one. Oh my God, that was perfect. The kinematics, just give them the kinematics. Don't ever give them the dynamics. Actually, make it seem like it's kinematically and dynamically true. Einstein even mixed those two together and didn't even like make a fine definition between the two
But
because that would be the
do they
downfall of
do
it. The
it?
dynamics have to add up. The dynamics are the physics, the real physics. The kinematics are just the mathematical reification.
And that's what's so funny when you argue about the planes, dude. It's so funny because you always they never want to answer that part of it, and you say it over and over again, which is what? Oh yeah, okay. What's the dynamic there? What's the what do you say a
The
lot?
mechanism, the mechanism.
Mechanism. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just the mechanism.
I don't
It's
know.
just
I don't
what's the
know if they don't want to
mechanism.
say it because they don't get the argument, or if it because they know better and they're avoiding it on purpose. That's the mystery to me. That's why it keeps me interested to argue with different people because I'm not sure if people know what part of it they're supposed to avoid because they really know it's not a ball, or they really believe it's not a ball and they're just confused by the whole argument. I don't know.
What mechanism about the plane?
Uh-oh.
No, we're not doing that tonight. No, we're not. I'm gonna spare everybody. I will not. Don't get me started.
See, go ahead. We have time.
Okay, so let me try. And Dave, just you know,
Oh, that would be awesome, dude. Actually, you know what? I'll put a note in the chat. I'll just copy paste what I did from last night, and you can use that as a guide, Jared. Because I think other people, if they agree with me, should be able to argue this by.
okay. So the Earth is spinning, correct? And it's spinning 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, and the miles per hour it spins goes down the further north and south on the ball that you are, and that's all correct, right?
Yes, the tangential velocity at any point on Earth is different. But if you want to talk about spinning, you don't talk about tangential velocity. You will talk about rotation per minute or rotation per day.
Double speaking. We know that. Go ahead.
Well, I think his argument is that if you have a plane that is going in the opposite direction of Earth's spin, right? And or wait, okay, Dave, I might need your help here. With the direction of Earth's spin, and then you have to make up the miles per hour of the spin of the Earth on top of what your plane is saying you're going. So when you're landing perfectly every time, what was the mechanism that was used to keep you from spinning like way off course, which is what you would be doing if the plane was actually doing that.
So we
Right?
should consider what
You're
is.
gonna,
We
Does that
should
do that?
consider
let
what.
me just let me. I don't know what happened. I don't know if my whole thing got deleted because it was like a wall of text that I put in the chat last night. Maybe I don't know how it got deleted. But yeah, it's just basically that if we're going to talk about conserved momentum, right? Like, who am I talking
I
to
was
here? Is
I,
it
I
Nico?
was not gonna I was
Nico?
not gonna mention conservation of momentum.
Well, no,
Dave,
no. Let me just
I was just
real quick.
wondering
Let me hit right. Hey, Jared, I'll
how
walk you
my
through the steps. I'll walk you
yeah.
through the steps. When we talk about jumping up in the air, Nico, or a helicopter that goes up in the air, right? And it just goes straight up and hovers, or you jump up. The reason that we're given with the Baller's model that the Earth doesn't move out from underneath your feet is that you are on the Earth, right? You conserve that momentum, so you're moving technically with the Earth when you jump up at the same rate, right? Because of conserved momentum, right? You get that part of it.
Yes, but this mechanical phenomena is marginal compared to the main phenomena that is that you have the pal of your helicopters that are acting on the air.
Like, can you say that one more time? It's minimal compared to what about the air?
You have the deviation that you will have. You go for the Coriolis effect. That it is marginal compared to the main action, main force that is acting on the helicopter. That is the pal of the helicopter that are acting on the air surrounding it.
What's the main thing acting on it? You're saying the
The
wind,
pal,
something like that.
the pal of the helicopter, the
The
wing of
pot.
the
Wait,
helicopter.
what's the power?
The pal is what is the main action compared to all the force acting on the helicopter. The main
The
one is
pole.
the pal of the helicopter acting on the air.
I'm having trouble with that word. The power that's
Yeah,
acting on the helicopter.
I think he was saying
The
pole. Would you
engine.
say pole?
No, pal, P-A-L-E, pal.
Yeah.
The the stick that turn over the helicopter, là, the fat
Oh, the
stick.
propeller. Propeller.
Mm.
The propeller, the thing that turns that
Yeah,
makes the helicopter.
the
Yeah,
propeller, yeah.
The
The
yeah,
rotor.
propeller is
propeller.
all the system.
Yeah.
A pal
Okay.
is
Yeah.
just one of them.
The engine, like so for a plane, it would be the engine, or and the thing is I think a lot of people, in fact, somebody that's heard me argue that many times is still confused. I overheard them say that I was trying to argue that had something to do with Coriolis force, and them not correcting for Coriolis, right? That's not my argument, or at least it's not the way I present the argument now. But the reason I start with conserve momentum is the reason they have to say conserve momentum, Jared, or they do say it, is because if you're standing, if you went up and just like, stayed up in the air a really long time, then the Earth should move out from underneath you if you didn't have that conserved momentum from being on the Earth and moving with the Earth the whole time, right? So they say that even if it's not true or not, it would be true to a certain extent. They wouldn't stay with you if you were in a helicopter indefinitely, the way a lot of people like to try to make it. But that's beside the point. The
Well, the
fact is,
basic
though,
thing, right?
that it's been a conserved momentum comes from being on the Earth, right? You're not in sync with the Earth because you're in the air. But that's what they start to have to argue when you're talking about flying to the equator, where it's going to be moving 1,000 miles an hour compared to where you were at 500 miles an hour. And I just
So
keep it to
what we
500
north
and
pole?
1,000 so that it doesn't get confusing. It's just that one scenario.
How fast
What's
is the
that?
I
North
agree.
Pole again? Is that what, 400 or?
Zero at the poles, and it tapers down to 1,000 miles an hour for surface
Okay, so
speed.
it's zero. Okay.
I
Zero
agree.
to 1,000.
I agree. At 60 north or 60 south, you are going 500 miles per hour of tangential velocity compared to the 1,000. But that still makes that it is two-thirds of a distance, so it's around the 6,000 kilometer. So around the 6,000 kilometers that you have, the Coriolis effect will be diluted along this whole side. You don't do it instant at in very short time. It happened a long time, and all this Coriolis effect, it's nothing compared to the action of the pile of your helicopter on the air that happen at every moment. The air that happen at every moment. The
Yeah,
action
and
of the tail propeller to stabilize
right.
your helicopter to not be spinning with the pal.
Right, and the wins, in fact, and I agree with that, and that's why I was surprised to hear somebody say that I was arguing that they should have to correct for Coriolis because it would be hidden in the wins, right? That's the irony of it. If there was an actual Coriolis effect or Coriolis force acting upon the plane, the winds could possibly be a lot more of an effect on the plane than this whatever the correction would be for a Coriolis effect. But that's why I take the ground path away. That's the most important part of the whole argument now, for me at least, is that if you give them a ground path, then they can say they're correcting for winds or Coriolis or whatever it is, so it doesn't matter and it's just hidden in the winds, which would be true if there was a ground path. That's why I make it a joyriding pilot that does loops all over the earth. He's got no direction in mind, but he does end up around the equator, which is happens to be about 500 miles per hour faster than where he started from. So if they want to pretend there's a 500 mile per hour conserved momentum somehow, a directly eastward conserved momentum, right? Because that would be the direction of the conserved momentum if you were on the Earth. But that's not going to be with the plane. But if they want to have the 500 mile per hour conserved momentum still moving the plane in rotation with the Earth, they need an extra 500. It has to be twice that when he goes to land because he always treats the Earth as stationary. So that's the whole point. You say he's a joyriding pilot landing in the clearing wherever he wants to. They don't have any destination. They have no ground path to correct for. And then they're lost because they're like, well, because they know he's going to be able to treat as stationary. But the way they justify that he'd be in sync is to have a ground path where they can say, oh, it would be this amount of adjustment over this amount of time, and it takes 12 hours. And all those things are things that I've learned over the years of arguing about planes before I got to this point where I'm like, you would never even need a ground path. You could just like, because before they had INS or any of that, pilots could just fly, and they can to this day. They can just fly wherever they want and land as if it's stationary, and they didn't correct for anything. And the only way that's possible consistently is if it's actually stationary.
Well, and that's the argument too, right? So there are flights, and they are doing what they're doing, but our argument kind of is like it's doing that because they're treating it as if it's motionless, and so that's why they're doing it the way they're doing it. And the problem comes is that if you're on a ball, you have to come up with all kinds of different mechanisms to make up for that 500-mile-an-hour difference, and that's a lot. By the way, that's not just some
Well, they
drop in
don't
the
have
bucket.
any mechanism. They just, yeah, they don't even have to try to say anything. They just say it's a ground path and it's point to point too. The whole path would be much longer if it was rotating, because if you're flying to a city that's moving 1,000 miles an hour, and you're at a place that's only moving 500, that city's moving faster than you are on the ball. So your ground path is going to be stretched out in a curved path because you're chasing the target just like you would have to do if you were actually shooting something. You know, you'd have to lead the target and all those things. You wouldn't have a point to point straight vertical direction that you're going to your city that way. It would change everything, right? But that's not the case. You just have, you know, a flight from New York to Florida going straight down to New York. Well, you know, it all works out mentally because why would it be any different? It's the same continent. You're going to fly that straight path. So it's like a very well devised reverse engineered thing. So if you take the ground path away and say he's just flying all over the place, you know, then they're like, oh shit. Well, then how is he in sync, right? Well, because it's stationary. Otherwise, you don't have those correcting for Coriolis winds or being on a path or any of that. And even if they did have a path, right? When you're going a certain mile per hour forward and like you're going a west southwest direction against the spin, right? Then you also have to say that the plane, to be in sync with the surface of the Earth, is moving in that eastward vector somehow in perfect sync with 1,000 miles an hour rotation. Now that's impossible just on its face because the plane would have to be going backwards if it's going westward and to be in sync with the 500 mile per hour extra tangential velocity. That's impossible just on its face, even with the ground path, right? And then he's
So
slowing down to land. And how's he going to keep accelerating at the same exact rate as the ground backwards as he's slowing down to land forwards to land on a surface that he treats as stationary?
And what ends up happening is the argument gets to a point where they're just like, well, it happened, so they must have done it somehow. They just don't know, you know, and it's like, dude, that's the problem. Like,
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
say.
if it's a ball, it has to happen. It has to happen because it's a ball and they land
so
every day.
so it
that's
will
the
be
whole point of the argument.
it will be founded your argument if you were talking only about a ballistic pass, not. But the problem is that what you said like, for the conservation of momentum, it works very well for the ballistic pass. That means that when your projectile is in the air, there is no additional force who are input by your projectile. When we talk about a plane or a helicopter, there is additional force that are added all along the flight. You will have the thrust of the engine. You will have the pile of the helicopter. You have all this. So your analogy will be correct if you can demonstrate that the additional force that are added by the plane or the helicopter are significantly lower than the Coriolis effect that you will have due to the ballistic pass.
Yeah, and
Oh,
what
wait, just
happens
real quick.
is that,
Just real quick. My argument's not about Coriolis whatsoever.
yeah,
My argument is that there's a 500 mile per hour. If you took off at a 500 mile per hour tangential velocity, whatever that latitude is, right? 60 degrees, you said. So if he flies to the equator, Nico, do you agree that he has to be moving in perfect rotation with the eastward tangential velocity of the Earth's surface for the pilot to be able to treat it as stationary?
Yes, it will be
Yeah, it would
6,000
have to be,
kilometers.
right?
Wait. It will be along the 6,000 kilometer pass. It will be 500, not 500, more than that. It will be a 1,000 kilometer difference between the two. So that means that it will be a lateral deflection of less than half a mile per half a mile per hour per miles to be corrected.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're saying, okay, now I can argue it this way with the ground path first. Okay. I'll walk through it slow. I won't get excited. I just want to make my point to you real quick about the tangential gradient, right? So you're saying in this scenario, he's got a ground path that he's correcting for. It would have to be incremental over a period of time so that the plane would then be moving eastward, right? Directly eastward of the Earth, which is faster than where he started from, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then you're also assuming that he's kept the original 500 miles per hour conserved momentum from being on the ground before he took off, right?
Yes, you can say that to simplify.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're just going to assume he kept the 500. That's fine, and he needed an additional 500, which was corrected for by staying on a ground path, and the ground path didn't change. It's just like that's worked into it, right? Because he still stays on the same ground path regardless of the correction for the eastward tangential velocity. But you're assuming that over that period of time, because he was on the ground path to get to that city, that correction is also built into the ground path, right?
Repeat.
Well, you're saying it would be incremental over time, right? Like the plane's got to be moving eastward in that eastward vector with the Earth perfectly in sync for him to treat it as stationary. And you're saying that the engines he's correcting for it. So he's literally moving the plane to be faster eastward, right? So that he can land as if it's stationary. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem, right? I don't know. Is he here still? Did he leave?
I don't know. The argument,
Maybe he did
the, ar-
lose connection or something. Yeah, he might have dropped
Maybe,
out.
yeah.
I mean,
That's a good thing. I don't have a voice to do it anyway.
it's just
But
funny because, like,
The point, Jared, is if you make it, that's why I make it west southwest. Because if you're flying west southwest, there's no correction eastward you can make that's going to
so
make your
with
plane go eastward faster.
with the spin, then that would be with the spin.
No, you're flying against the spin. West southwest would be against the spin. The spin
Oh,
is
against?
eastward directly.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
west southwest.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
going
Okay.
west southwest, you're going against the spin, but you're also flying towards an area where there's a higher eastward tangential velocity you have to match. And you can't
Dude,
match that if you're going the opposite direction. You can't correct eastward when you're going west. Even west southwest, you can't correct eastward. Zanuck says
dude,
you could correct south and it'd be just like east.
I don't know where I'm at in this place anymore, dude. It's all over the place. But if it would just stop, let me figure this place out and quit spinning all the time. That's what
Well,
trips me
the
out,
Earth's
dude.
not going to stop. The Earth isn't going to stop rotating, so you can land as if it's stationary.
Yeah,
You know, that's what would have to happen whether you have a ground path or not. Because even if you're correcting and somehow your plane was moving eastward at the exact same speed as the Earth, even if that were happening somehow, which wouldn't make any sense, especially if you're aiming the opposite direction. But even if that were happening, you're slowing down to land. So then you would still need the momentum that somehow that eastward vector of momentum that keeps you in sync with the Earth, that can't go away at all. That can never go away until you're on the Earth and it wouldn't matter anymore. But there's no way that your plane's ever going to be going in perfect sync with a rotation while you're slowing down to land in any direction. It just kills the ball. It debunks the ball so emphatically, which is why it's the only thing I argue anymore, really.
well, and they don't like the fact that the pilot treats the Earth as if it's stationary. Like they don't like that at all, bro. That's a big hit
Once they
on their.
realize what I'm talking about, at least. Otherwise, they haven't even thought about it.
What is like their best kind of explanation though? They say that the air mass is just pushing the plane along incrementally to increase the speed of it.
I don't know if I call it best. I maybe call it like only thing that you can possibly imagine as an excuse, I guess, because there's nothing else that would really solve it. But it doesn't even solve it. It doesn't even. I mean, to think that the air is carrying your plane backwards at 1,000 miles an hour as you're slowing down forwards in the other direction. I mean, that's insane. If you want to believe it, you can believe it. I guess you have to if you're going to keep your ball.
Conservation of momentum is the argument they use all the time, and they don't realize that it goes against the whole thing they're thinking of.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Well, yeah, because the conservation side, conservation of momentum admits there's two separate reference frames, right? And it admits the air's not carrying it. That came from being on the ground, right? And with the tangential gradient, they don't have the right amount to match the surface of the Earth at a higher tangential velocity. So the conservation of momentum doesn't do any good. And just by being in the air, that wouldn't do any good. Otherwise, we wouldn't even talk about conservation of momentum from being on the Earth. It doesn't come from being in the air. You're not in sync with the Earth because you're in the air. Plus, you got winds going in all directions. So, anyway, don't get me started.
Nico's back. Nico, are you back? Well, he's back in here. Maybe he.
Sorry, I received a phone call. My wife called. I have to answer this call if I want to leave tomorrow.
No problem.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you can pick up where you were if you want.
So did you understand what he was saying, like with the speed of the plane being different and then going
Oh,
to the
yeah,
equator with them on all
no,
that?
I understand. It's totally the Coriolis effect. But me, the
Okay.
point I want to highlight is that you have bigger force acting on the plane than the Coriolis effect, than this changement of
Velocity.
velocity, tangential velocity that you have. You have the plane, the thrust of the plane, the action of the wing and the wind around the plane that have a bigger effect than the Coriolis effect to even start to take into account the difference of speed with the latitude. You have a lateral
Yeah, well,
wind.
I was saying, I think when you left, I was saying that my argument's not about Coriolis effect or Coriolis force at
It
all.
is. It is.
Well, hold on a sec. You might assume so because you haven't heard what I said yet. But what I'm saying is that well, first of all, if the plane goes west-southwest, right, it's aiming against the spin, right, the whole time, but it's going towards the equator where it would have to be eastward going faster to match the spin of the Earth, right? How would he ever be correcting eastward to go faster eastward if he's headed west-southwest? That's my first question.
And all it came to your mechanical system that you have the force acting on your plane, that you can add all of them and to quantify all of them, and you will see that the Coriolis force is peanuts compared to all the other force that is acting on the
I
plane.
agree with him. I agree
Yeah.
with that. That's why I'm saying my argument's not about Coriolis force. I think it would be hidden in the winds. I agree with all of that. That's not what I'm trying to argue. Can you understand that?
And yes,
Okay,
I
so
understand.
my question to you, regardless of any Coriolis or any of that, I'm saying if he needs to go 500 miles per hour directly eastward, faster, right? The plane needs to be going in sync faster directly eastward. But the plane only flew west southwest against the spin the whole time. How's he going to correct eastward to make the plane go faster eastward in that vector? You know, that would be backwards and sideways to him. There's no way to correct for that when he's headed in the opposite direction. That's just one part of it. Do you understand that?
I understand. And you
So then
will have,
how is he going faster eastward if he can't correct eastward at all?
because it doesn't correct for it. He is moving in the air. The air is moving with the earth also. Well, mostly you have wind in all direction, but mostly it's going with the earth. And the action of the plane on this air will be diluting all this difference of speed that you have.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is the other thing. So people usually try to say it's the plane correcting for the path, and then as soon as you take that away from them, they say, oh, the air is doing it. He's in the air, so the air is making him go faster eastward. Now, those are two different arguments, really, because either the air is making you in sync, or the pilot's doing these corrections that makes him in sync, right? And you can mix them up and whatever else you need to, like, justify it. But there's two different ways of approaching that. I noticed on the baller side is they like to use both, however it needs to happen. The air's doing it, the pilot's doing it, whatever it needs to happen so that the ball stays alive. But my point is, even if that were happening, right, when he slows down, right, in the opposite direction, to land, are you saying that the air is carrying the plane backwards with the Earth at 1,000 miles an hour at the same time?
No, what I will say is that the pilot have to correct for other things more important than the rotation of Earth.
I agree with that. I agree with that
Yeah,
part. But you're saying the air is making him in sync with the Earth, right? You said the
yes,
air.
yeah,
Yeah, so
that
the
was
air is carrying the plane. The air is carrying the plane then backwards at 1,000 miles an hour, even as he's circling the airport and then slowing down to land in the opposite direction. That whole time, the air is moving him eastward with in perfect sync with the Earth. That's what you believe?
yes, because you will have, as that says, you will have a long distance. As we start back with the example, starting 60 north to go to the equator, it will be a 6,000 kilometer, 6,600 kilometer to of traveling, and all along this one, you just have to add 500 kilometer per hour of rotation. So the action of your plane all along, acting on the air, will be incrementally, continuously collecting and getting sync with the rotation of the air that is going
So
with
you're
the
saying
Earth.
it's both. You're saying it's both the air and correcting. Like they're both helping each other stay in
Yeah.
sync. Like the air's acting on the plane and he's correcting. So then those two things like add up like what is it, 60/40? Is it 60% air, 40% corrections that makes them perfectly in sync?
Uh,
What do you
I,
think? What do you think? What's
I,
percentage of
I,
both?
I think the pilot is not even thinking about correcting for Coriolis.
No, he's not. He's just treating it as stationary because it's stationary. But let's pretend it's a ball again. Now, if it's a ball, he's got to be correcting for something as well as the air helping him stay in sync, right? So, what do you think? What percentage of the air is helping him compared to like the correcting?
Mhm. Seeing the tons of the kilotons of push that have the plane, the thrust of the plane, it is insignificant, insignificant compared to the force of the jet engine of
Oh,
the
I
plane.
agree. Coriolis would be insignificant compared to like the flying and the winds and everything. But we still
And
have a 500 mile per hour difference of the surface that he's landing on to deal with, right? So if you want to
and
keep that 500 miles per hour conserved momentum, that's also pretty pretend. But we can pretend that he still has 500 miles per hour eastward tangential velocity, even though he flew west southwest for 10 hours, and he's still moving east at 500 miles an hour. You had. Do you get why that's ridiculous to begin with? Why would
no,
he
no,
still
no,
be
no.
moving with that conserved momentum even though he's flying for hours in the opposite direction? Why would that still stick with the plane? That original conserved momentum you have to hold on to for your mathematics.
Yeah, but me, I will use the conservation of momentum only for ballistic trajectory, not for a plane or an helicopter.
Oh, okay. So then he'd have to be going 1,000 miles an hour faster than where he took off from, or just let's just say at the equator where he's about to land. He needs to be moving eastward in that eastward vector, no matter which direction the plane's flying. He needs to be moving with the Earth consistently at 1,000 miles an hour somehow. Now he's circling the airport, right? He's got to circle like maybe 20 times because he's waiting for the queue so he can actually land on this. It's a busy airport, right? So you're saying that as he's circling in the air, there's somehow that vector, that eastward vector of 1,000 miles an hour, is being maintained so he can just circle the airport, and he's also going eastward with the airport at 1,000 miles an hour, and so then the air would have to be acting on the left side of the plane, the right side of the plane, the floor. It would have to be, because he's circling, right? So it's not like the air could just be pushing him backwards in one direction or sideways in one direction. Now it needs to be like maintaining it's like carrying the plane as it's circling in the air. Can you imagine that the atmosphere has the force and the torque to just push this plane in that direction, even though the pilot doesn't feel any headwind or side wind, or it's just like he's circling an airport that's stationary. But because it's the air above him that he's in, you can pretend that the air is carrying him with the rotation of the Earth, right? Is that what you're thinking?
what I'm thinking is all these arguments is to separate ballistic from propelled flight. So you are familiar with the artillery manual that will have a correction for the
Yeah, I'm
rotational
not talking
curve.
about Coriolis at all. Coriolis has
Yeah, yeah.
nothing to do
No,
with
but
this argument. I'm not talking about
see,
Coriolis.
it is the change of
No.
tangential velocity with latitude.
Well, yeah, but now,
It is Coriolis.
yeah, but now we're talking about the mechanism that's keeping the plane in sync. That's all I care about right now. Right? What's the
Yes,
mechanism that keeps him in sync with the 1,000 mile an hour rotation as he's circling the airport 20 times over like a half hour maybe 2 hours? But the air is carrying him sideways, backwards, forwards, all those things as he's circling. Think about the air's force on the plane that would have to be so consistent that he notices nothing, but it's a force big enough to keep him moving as he's circling the airport as if the airport weren't moving at all. But according to the globe model, the airport's moving 1,000 miles an hour.
let me tell you one thing that happened to me. I was in Yokohama, Japan, repairing a ship, and I have to go back to Korea after I finish the repair on the ship. And at this time, when I arrive in Narita in the airport, waiting to register my luggage, they gave us a paper telling us that there is at this time a typhoon who is heading for South Korea, and that they will attempt to go to Busan. But if the weather is degrading too much, we will be landing at Seoul Airport, Seoul Airport, and it will be at my cost to go from Seoul to Busan. So I call my company, and they take the flight. And if there is any cost for traveling after by train, by car, by anything from Seoul to Busan, it will be okay. So I took the flight, and when you arrive, come on, to Gimei Airport in Busan, you make, as you said, a circle on it. I took this flight many times, and generally you see the blue sea, the cobalt sea. It's nice. But at this time, due to the typhoon, it was white. So also the pilot announced that he will attempt to land in Guinea. And generally, you don't see the runway, but the plane was so much sideways due to the side wind on it that by the window, I can see the runway, and the plane was landing completely in crab compared to it. So at this time, it doesn't care about the plane doesn't care about the rotation of Earth. It cares about the wind that there is happening. And
Yeah,
we
that's
finally
my point.
we land. It was a rocky landing, one of the rockiest landing I have on a plane, and we arrive in Busan safely. So
Yeah, okay.
that
So when you're landing, when you saw, go ahead.
it shows that the wind all around the plane, it's really more important than
Yeah,
any
I agree.
tangential velocity, and that is a force who is largely bigger than anything else.
Right, I agree. I agree with all that because, I mean, if it was stationary, then the wind and the air moving the plane would be all he'd have to worry about. He wouldn't have to worry about the Earth moving. Now, if it was wind, like say that wind you're talking about, like that wind moving in the opposite direction of the rotation, wouldn't allow you to think that the air is still keeping him in sync with the Earth moving the opposite direction at 1,000 miles an hour, right? That's my point. See, because if there's winds moving the planes in all directions, you can't imagine that the atmosphere, the air, is still keeping him at 1,000 miles an hour in perfect sync with the airport. That's my point.
And my point is that the action of the plane on the air are bigger than any force you will have to apply for any change of tangential speed that you have between the departure speed and the landing speed.
So in your
Well, no,
mind,
the pilot never has to account for any rotation of the Earth whatsoever. I agree. But he's never
Yeah,
worried about the rotation of the Earth, right? My point
Yes,
is, if the Earth were rotating, there'd be all kinds of problems.
and my point
And
is that you have bigger problems than to take care of this small one.
No, the big problem would be if the Earth were rotating. Thank God it's not, because if it were, then the air wouldn't be able to keep the plane in sync as the airport's moving at 1,000 miles an hour. Do you get my point?
I get your point. I disagree completely, but I get your point.
Well, okay, so you do think the air is keeping the plane moving eastward at 1,000 miles an hour in perfect sync with the airport, even if winds are blowing him in the opposite direction? Is that what you think?
Me? No, what I said is that the action of the plane on the media is flying in. It is more important than the rotation of Earth, who is going with the media that is flying in.
so you're
Yeah,
saying the mechanism comes from the winds, right? It's coming from the winds. That's where you're saying, because you
No,
would
not from
need.
the winds. Not from the winds. From the action of the plane on the air around him.
yeah,
Oh,
but he's
okay.
circling. He's just circling the airport. There's no way he could be correcting eastward when he's circling a stationary airport. He's not. That has nothing to do with the engines keeping the plane in sync with a directly eastward vector of 1,000 miles an hour when he's circling in circles west, northwest, southwest, east, west, and he's going all those directions as he's circling what he sees as a stationary airport. But you have to believe the air is carrying him still in that eastward direction at 1,000 miles an hour, even though he's only going about 100 miles an hour in a forwards direction in a perfect circle. How is
Because
that
the
possible?
Well, if he wants to respond, I was just gonna say because the conserved momentum only works for a minute or two. You know, like if you're on something, like you're on one of those like crosswalk things, like in the airport, makes you go fast. Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
can run really fast and jump off of it, and you'll get a little bit of extra momentum, but that doesn't last long. And you can't start turning around and going other directions and maintain that.
He said that with planes they don't talk about he's not trying to argue for conserved momentum. He's saying that the plane's actions and because the plane's in the air, he's going to be automatically in sync. But my point is, so even if you're not claiming conserved momentum, something's got to keep the plane moving at 1,000 miles an hour with the rotation, so that airport can look like it's stationary. You know, it's either actually stationary or some mechanism is keeping the plane in sync as he's doing a circle at 100 miles an hour 20 times around. There's no mechanism you can name that would even realistically make any sense. Do you agree?
All right, let's hear Nico's response because I jumped in. Let's let him go. Go ahead.
So, if we go, because you are representing it compared to a reference system that you have the Earth rotating, the air rotating, and the plane flying in the air as one absolute reference system. When I'm talking about the plane acting on the air, I'm talking only about the reference system of the plane moving with the air.
Yeah,
So
but
for me,
the plane's going
for
around in
me,
circles. What's the mechanism keeping him in sync with 1,000 mile an hour rotation
because
as he's
the
circling the
air,
airport?
the,
What's
the
pushing
air
the
is
plane
moving.
eastward?
The air is moving
Okay, you
with
think it's the air.
the planet. The
You
air is
think the air
moving
is
with.
pushing? You think the air is carrying the plane 1,000 miles an hour, regardless of him going 100 miles an hour around in a circle? It's pushing on the left side of the plane, the right side of the plane, the front of the plane. Like he's just doing perfect circles. He's not feeling any force at all. We just sees a stationary airport, but you believe the air is carrying him in perfect sync, and there's no notice of anything on forces on the pilot's part, right? So how is that possible?
I'm saying that the thrust of the jet engine that there is on a plane are by manifold bigger than the need of a force to correct for the change of the tangential velocity, and that any correction that he will adjusting his tail, he will be adjusting his altitude, are by manifold bigger than any need. It is diluted. He
Yeah,
will
but that's
follow
like
he will follow his GPS. He will follow his GPS to go from point to point, and
Right. I know that.
that
I
any change.
agreed with you about that, though. I agreed with you about that, right? I'm not talking about Coriolis force or correcting for it or how it would be less than the winds or the engines would be more forceful than a correction. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about now the plane is at the equator. He's got no conserved momentum that he's holding onto, and he's circling around, and his engines, all his engines are doing is pushing the plane forward in a circle at 100 miles an hour over the stationary airport that is moving 1,000 miles an hour in the globe model. So there has to be a mechanism that keeps the plane in sync with that 1,000 mile an hour airport. And it's not the engine because he's just going forward at 100 miles an hour in a circle. What's keeping the plane in perfect sync? What force, what actual, like realistic force would be able to do that?
The plane take off, the air has a tangential velocity. At the landing, it have another tangential velocity, and all along the travel between it, it will have push and make. It will have develop force and act upon the air that will be diluting the needs of any arriving. When the plane arrived to the landing area, he lost already, he lost or he gained all this tangential velocity by having acting on the air continuously all along the travel.
Okay, let's say you're right about that part of it. I don't agree that would happen, but let's just say the correcting for the GPS and everything somehow made the plane go eastward directly at 1,000 miles an hour by the time he got to the airport. But now he's circling the airport, waiting to get the clearing to land. And he's circling for like an hour, right? So you're saying that as he's circling, going 100 miles an hour in a circle around the airport, that he's also still going 1,000 miles an hour because he caught up to the spin of the Earth in the travel there, and then he's
Yes,
still, even though he's going around in a circle, like in like a west, north, east, south, he's going around in a circle, and so the plane still is somehow maintaining like a conserved momentum that just doesn't go away. That it still maintains that 1,000 miles an hour eastward vector somehow because the
yes,
engines did it beforehand.
yes.
Really?
And when he will be turning, he will be banking on one side. He will have his flap up on one side. He have the flap down on the other side. He will have his governor tail that will be angle at one side. It will be a lot of force acting on the aerodynamic playing on the plane to be
No,
keep
but do
acting
you
on the
get?
air.
I don't know if it's a communication problem. He's just circling at 100 miles an hour forward in a circle because he's already got to his destination a long time ago. But now he's
Yeah,
just
but
circling at 100 miles an hour. He's not keeping up with anything with the engines at that point. He's just circling a stationary airport. So what's making him in sync with the 1,000 mile an hour rotation that the airport is on the surface of the 1,000 mile an hour rotation? What would possibly keep the plane in such sync that the pilot doesn't have any idea that the thing's moving at all? I mean,
make,
apparently to him, it's not moving at all. He can just land whenever they tell him he can.
making the little circle at the airport, the tangential velocity you are talking about, it is nothing. It will be a few tenths of miles per hour of tangential velocity making his little circle. We are not talking about the 500. As you agreed that along the travel that is coming from the takeoff to the landing, it will have gained all this tangential velocity by acting upon the air. So when you make all this circle, it is no more the 500 difference of tangential velocity. It is some little things. And as I explained, when the plane is circling around the airport, taxiing around, it will be acting with a different force on the wings, on everything, to be turning all around.
Yeah, I don't know if you get my point, but you're saying that the plane is already moving at 1,000 miles an hour eastward
Yes,
regardless if he slowed down to go around in circles and then because like think about it, like the plane is facing north and south and east and west as he's circling, so then you have to imagine somehow that this 1,000 miles an hour the eastward vector that he somehow gained, which I don't think would happen, but just for the sake of the argument, let's say that did happen. How is that maintained in every direction that the plane turns to be in sync with the Earth because he happened to be catching up to it on the way there? That doesn't make any. I don't think physics agrees with that, but you can believe that if you want, I guess.
I think physics agree perfectly with me for
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
Mm?
I don't need to try to break your balls over it, but I don't think that would work. And I don't think anyone else would imagine that would be possible either. Anybody else agree with that?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm
Anything?
trying to
Anybody else
I'm
have
trying to get
input?
where you're getting the mechanism from because you said earlier it was the air or the wind, and then the air, and then the plane is moving with the. And you said something about if thrust in the engine
Yes.
would, and
Yes.
you're saying for the combination. So then you're saying the combination of the three would be your answer to the mechanism that would be needed in order for you to land on something that looks stationary but is actually spinning. Is that all right? Is that like kind
Yeah.
of your
Grosso modo.
steel
Grosso
man?
modo. Grosso modo. Me, what I said is that the action of the plane on the air are by manifold bigger than any need of correction for the tangential velocity of the change of tangential velocity along the latitude.
So you're totally fine with the forces that would be needed in order to, or the forces, the mechanism that would be needed in order for your plane to circle around, air. Like you're good with that. Like you have no
No,
issue
yes,
with
yes. And
what
as
would be needed.
many flat earthers have been presenting that you have the NASA document or anything document telling a rigid aircraft over a flat plane and everything of constant mass. That is a simplification for it. Simplification for it. I fully understand. When you have this problem, local problem, you can simplify the problem by eliminating all irrelevant force that it is nothing compared to the other force engaged in the system you are describing.
Well, that is actually their argument back is when we say that the pilot treats it as it's stationary because it's stationary. I mean, that's kind of a duh thing, but
No, they treat it as you said. They
they
treat it.
say, no,
They treat it. They don't. They
right.
don't say. They don't say it is. They
And your
treat it
argument,
as it is.
right, your argument was that it's because it's simpler that way, right? I was just
Yeah,
bringing up that
not
that's a
simpler. It's
common.
simplified. Not simpler. It's simplified
Yeah,
by
Simpler.
eliminating.
Nico, real quick, I got to go, but there's a couple, just two questions, real quick. Are you just defending the model, or do you actually think that it's actually a spinning ball and that all those forces just make them in sync somehow?
Yeah. Attends. Repeat. It was some sound outside. I
I'm
didn't
asking,
hear.
are you just like arguing for just defending the model and trying to like come up with ways to make it work for the model, or do you actually think that it's actually happening and all those forces, even though he's circling the airport at 100 miles an hour, you think somehow that he could just be in sync with the Earth at 1,000 miles an hour eastward vector, even though all the other vectors are just 100 miles an hour in
I'm
north,
just.
south, west, east, west.
I'm just stating fact that me I will be better to talk about ships, and ships will not take into account any come on change of tangential velocity when they are navigating because they have way more problem than the wind, the current, and the and come on
Well, you're just
the
talking about you'd be better.
wave.
You're saying you'd be better at defending ships rather than planes because planes are hard to defend the model with, right? Is that what you're saying?
No,
But he believes it though. He believes it. He's not just arguing just to argue.
Okay.
no.
Then last question, Nico. And let's just
Yeah,
say the
go.
Earth is stationary. Let's just say the Earth is stationary, right? What would be the
Yes.
difference for how they would start to the Earth is stationary, right? How would what would be the difference of how you would train a pilot to fly over a stationary level Earth compared to how you train a pilot to fly over a spinning globe Earth? What would be the difference?
I will talk only about a stationary globe and a rotating globe. It will be no difference because of the force we are talking about are insignificant compared to other force that you have to take into account.
Even though there would have to be a force moving the plane at 1,000 miles an hour eastward so that he could circle the airport that seems stationary to him, that would be insignificant. That 1,000 miles an hour, whatever that force is, that's keeping the plane in sync with 1,000 mile an hour rotation. That's insignificant to you.
Yeah, it will be insignificant. That it will be
Ah,
insignificant to. It's insignificant to take into account the orbit speed of Earth around the Sun in this equation.
Around
okay,
the
you heard
sun.
it here folks. 1,000 miles an hour rotation, 1,000 miles an hour eastward vector is insignificant for the plane to have to deal with, I guess.
Yes, because if you go further like by adding all this force, you go to the orbit of Earth. You will be going 67,000 mph in one direction, and 12 hours later, you will be going 65,000 kilometers per hour due to the rotation of Earth and the orbit.
That's so
So
funny you brought that up. The CERN physicist tried to use this on me. Last time I talked to Franco, the CERN physicist, about this, he's like, well, I don't know why you're worried about Earth rotation. There's a 2,000 mile an hour vector change in a 12-hour period, and we
Yeah.
don't feel that. So why are you saying that this would be significant? But
Yeah, it's
that's true
minuscule,
because
right?
we're going around the sun. There would be a 2,000 mile an hour vector change, and their justification is that's crazy compared to what any plane would have to do. So the plane argument is insignificant compared to that. But the
That's
fact of the matter is, if there was a 2,000 mile an hour vector change within 12 hours, that would also be a problem, and it's also imaginary that that's happening.
well, it's funny because the spin of the Earth now is negligible. Like it doesn't matter, right? Because that's what you said
Yeah, they
too.
always have to compare it to something else relative to the 2,000 mile an hour vector change that we would experience, and we're going around 67,000 mile an hour around because that is true mathematically, and they have to accept that. But then it makes all the other little arguments that are actually big arguments seem.
oh, it cut off. Hello, hello.
Cheers, Nico. I gotta go. Take care, brother.
Yeah. Hey yo.
Booked a flight today, Heathrow to JFK. Headed west southwest, cause there ain't no better way. Gonna find that old Coriolis, they say she's hidden in the winds. But that just can't be if we rotate east, tangential gradient. Hidden in the winds, Coriolis must be hidden in the winds. But the earth ain't moving faster with the further south we've been. And we never could land safely with that tangential gradient. And we all know every pilot treats the earth as motionless. So to think it must be moving is just insane, you must confess. But please don't get offended if this song makes too much sense. Just thank God that landing's easy with no tangential gradient in the winds. They said she'd just be hidden in the winds. But the earth ain't moving faster with the further south we've been. And we never could land safely with that tangential gradient. So here's a lesson for who's listening. It's dynamics that are true. No kinematic concept could ever substitute. So the next time you are flying, no matter where you go, don't worry about rotation, cause we ain't on no damn globe. So here's a lesson for who's listening. It's dynamics that are true. No kinematic concept could ever substitute. So the next time you are flying, no matter where you go, don't worry about rotation, cause we ain't on no damn globe. Hidden in the winds, Coriolis just ain't hidden in these winds. And the earth ain't moving faster with the further south we go. So thank God we won't be crashing when those wheels hit down below. Hidden in the winds, there ain't no Coriolis hidden in the winds. And thank God it's stationary, or we never safely land on a surface that is moving with a tangential gradient. Yes, here's a lesson for who's listening. It's dynamics that are true. No kinematic concept could ever substitute. So the next time you are flying, no matter where you go, don't worry about rotation, cause we ain't on no damn globe. Hidden in the winds, Coriolis just ain't hidden in these winds. And their earth ain't moving faster with the further south we've been. And thank God we won't be crashing when we touch down at the end. And thank the Lord, Earth is stationary, or we never safely land on a surface that is moving. There's no tangential gradient.
Yeah, I don't know if you get my point, but you're saying that the plane is already moving at 1,000 miles an hour eastward,
Yeah.
regardless if he slowed down to go around in circles, and then because like think about it, like the plane is facing north and south and east and west as he's circling. So then you have to imagine somehow that this 1,000 miles an hour, the eastward vector that he somehow gained, which I don't think would happen, but just for the sake of the argument, let's say that did happen. How is that maintained in every direction that the plane turns to be in sync with the Earth, because he happened to be catching up to it on the way there? That doesn't make any. I don't think physics agrees with that, but you can believe that if you want, I guess.
I think physics agree perfectly with me for
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
Mm.
I don't need to try to break your balls over it, but I don't think that would work. And I don't think anyone else would imagine that would be possible either.